Elias Varga moved carefully through the twisting labyrinth of alleys, the faint echo of his footsteps swallowed by the surrounding stillness. The masquerade festival, with its tumultuous crowds and swirling masks, felt a distant memory here replaced by a spectral silence broken only by the occasional drip of water from the eaves above. Ahead, a narrow passage opened between two aging buildings, where a single flickering lantern swayed gently in the breeze, casting a pale, unsteady glow on a heavy wooden door, its surface worn and scarred by time. Elias's pulse quickened as he approached. This was the threshold to a hidden world, the secret society that lurked behind the veneer of Venetian pageantry. He adjusted the mask concealing his identity, its dark contours a deliberate contrast to the elaborate disguises worn by the revelers hours before. His mission had brought him here, to penetrate the shadows and uncover the sinister forces orchestrating the deadly game of masks from within. The door creaked softly as Elias pushed it open, slipping inside with practiced stealth. The room beyond was vast and dimly lit, adorned with rich tapestries and ornate chandeliers that hung like frozen stars in the gloom. Around a long table draped in crimson velvet, a dozen figures sat, their faces hidden behind intricate masks of gold, feathers, and jewels. Their voices were low, measured, a murmur of conspiratorial tones that filled the chamber with a palpable tension. Elias found a shadowed corner near the entrance and allowed his eyes to roam, cataloging each masked attendee. The atmosphere was thick with power, ambition, and veiled threats. He recognized the subtle cues of dominance in their posture, the cautious exchanges of glances that betrayed fragile alliances. This was no mere gathering, it was the heart of a clandestine network pulling the strings behind the festival's facade. A sudden movement caught his attention. Livia Conti emerged from the shadows, her presence as commanding as ever despite the delicate mask framing her striking features. Her dark hair shimmered under the chandelier's light, and her eyes glinted with a mixture of resolve and uncertainty as she approached Elias. "You made it," she whispered, her voice a silken thread amidst the murmurs. "But be careful. Not everyone here shares your interests." Elias nodded, appreciating both the warning and the fragile alliance they shared. Livia's loyalty was a precarious thing rooted in family legacy and personal ambition. It was as shifting as the masks they both wore. The meeting unfolded with chilling clarity. At its head sat a figure whose mask was a grotesque blend of Venetian artistry and menace, the embodiment of the society's ruthless grip on power. He spoke of influence, control, and the manipulation of the masquerade's chaos to serve political ends. Each word was a calculated move in a game far larger than Elias had imagined. The realization settled over Elias like a tightening noose. This killer was not acting alone. The 13th mask was a symptom of a deeper rot, a shadow embedded in Venice's very soul. His mission had just become infinitely more dangerous. As the meeting adjourned, Elias retreated into the night, the weight of new knowledge pressing heavily on his shoulders. The masquerade's glittering surface had been pierced, revealing the dark machinery beneath. Trust was a currency he could ill afford, and time was slipping away with every tick closer to the final night. He paused on a bridge overlooking a quiet canal, the water reflecting the fractured lights of the city. The echo of footsteps behind him made him turn sharply, but it was only Livia, her expression unreadable behind her mask. "We have enemies in every shadow," she said softly. "But so do they." Elias met her gaze, the lines of fatigue and resolve etched deep into his face. "Then we fight in the dark." Venice held its breath, poised on the edge of revelation and ruin, and Elias Varga was caught in the heart of its deadly masquerade, where every mask concealed a lie, and every truth was a risk. The night had only just begun, and the game was far from over. The flickering gas lamps along the narrow alley cast long, wavering shadows on the ancient stones, interspersed with the soft lapping of water against weathered walls. It was the 5th night of the masquerade, and already the city seemed to pulse with a dangerous energy that Elias felt in his bones. He stopped at the edge of a narrow canal where the body had been discovered, carefully stepping around the cordon of local officers who gave him terse nods of acknowledgement. The victim lay face down, an elegant mask black with silver filigree still secured over the face. hiding the identity in death as much as life. The water beneath was dark, mirroring the murky secrets Elias was desperate to unravel. Elias crouched, his gloved fingers brushing lightly over the victim's hands, noting the delicate jewelry and the faint scent of jasmine clinging to the fabric of the victim's cloak. The scene was eerily still, but beneath the surface, Elias sensed the currents of deception swirling with increasing ferocity. The killer was no longer just a shadow in the crowd. He was sending a message, and Elias was beginning to understand the language. Any witnesses? Elias asked the attending officer without looking up. None, the officer replied grimly. The usual crowd masked and drunk. No one sees anything they want to admit. Elias's gaze drifted to the water, where the faint ripple of a passing gondola disturbed the silence. His mind raced through the details of the past nights, searching for a pattern, a clue that would break the killer's deadly code. As he rose, a familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Turning, Elias found Livia Conti approaching, her dark hair cascading over an ornate silver mask that shimmered under the lantern light. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, met his with a mix of concern and something Elias wasn't sure he trusted. This is bad, she said softly, glancing down at the body. The killer's escalating, Elias nodded, and it's no coincidence. The victims, there's a pattern. Livia folded her arms, the delicate lace of her gloves contrasting with the steely edge in her voice. I've heard whispers connections to your past missions. This isn't just random killing. It's personal. The weight of her words settled heavily on Elias. He had hoped to keep his history buried beneath layers of anonymity, but the killer was dragging it into the open, weaponizing memories he'd long tried to forget. Suddenly, a bustle of footsteps echoed behind them. Marco Bellini appeared, his rugged features drawn tight with exhaustion and resolve. He held a thick folder of documents and maps, slapping them down on a nearby stone bench. We need to talk, Marco said brusquely. There's been movement. Somebody's been tailing the suspects. I've got leads, but they're messy. Elias's eyes flicked between Livia and Marco, the uneasy alliance between the three of them tightening under the strain of the investigation. Trust was a fragile commodity here, and every step forward felt like a gamble. Later, in the dim confines of a small tavern nestled near the Rialto Bridge, Elias met with Sofia Marini. The bartender's sharp eyes missed nothing, and tonight she had information that could shift the balance. I overheard something, Sofia whispered, leaning close so only Elias could hear. A name keeps coming up, someone connected to your old unit. Elias's heart quickened. The circle was closing. The killer was drawing him in, forcing him to confront ghosts he'd hoped were buried forever. Outside, the city continued its masquerade, the masks and shadows concealing more than just faces. For Elias, the ticking clock was no longer just a measure of time, but a countdown to a reckoning that threatened to shatter everything he believed about trust, identity, and survival. As the fifth night drew to a close, Elias felt the cold grip of desperation tighten. The killer's pattern was clear now, and the next moves would be critical. One wrong step, one misplaced trust, and the cost could be fatal. He looked out over the glittering canals, the reflections fractured and distorted, a mirror of the fractured truths he had to piece together. The masquerade was no longer a festival. It was a battlefield, and the stakes had never been higher. Elias squared his shoulders and stepped back into the crowd, the mask settling over his face as the midnight bell tolled. The game was far from over, and the killer was waiting. Who will wear the next mask? Elias wondered, the question echoing inside him as the city held its breath. The marble beneath his feet was slick from a recent rain shower, and the faint echoes of distant laughter and music from the masquerade ball drifted through the labyrinthine streets. He paused momentarily, his breath visible in the chill, and glanced down at the water below. His reflection shimmered disjointedly, fragmented by the ripples, much like the fractured sense of reality that had begun to gnaw at him. Since his arrival, the game had grown ever more perilous, and tonight the lines between friend and foe blurred to an unbearable degree. The killer's ability to shift faces with every midnight stroke made every glance suspicious, every encounter fraught with unseen dangers. Yet it was not only the killer's masks that unsettled Elias, it was the masks his allies wore, the half-truths. The guarded glances, the silence where trust should have been. Elias's mind replayed the myriad conversations of the past days, each word now tainted with doubt. Livia Conti's charm, once a beacon of hope, now cast long shadows of uncertainty. Her loyalties seemed to shift like the tides, her information precious yet peppered with omissions. He remembered the last time they met, her eyes gleaming with an unspoken warning, her voice laced with hesitation. Was she protecting him or guarding secrets for her family's interests? He couldn't tell anymore. In the dim light of the tavern, the haze of smoke curled around Elias's thoughts as he recalled the confrontation with Livia. They had stood mere feet apart, yet a chasm yawned between them. Her words had cut sharp edges into the fragile alliance they'd built. "You think I'm playing both sides?" she had asked, a flicker of hurt beneath the defiance. Elias's reply was cold, his voice low. "I don't know what to think anymore." Outside the tavern, Marco Bellini waited, his expression a mixture of frustration and fatigue. Elias had trusted the detective, welcomed the pragmatism and streetwise insight he brought to their investigation. But even Marco's steady presence was now a source of tension. Their latest argument had left both men raw, their words echoing off the ancient walls of the alley. "You're too quick to suspect everyone," Marco had snapped, his voice rough and edged with exhaustion. "If you push everyone away, you'll end up alone." Elias had clenched his fists, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder than ever. "Better alone than dead," he'd retorted, the cold truth settling in his chest. As the masquerade's music swelled from the distance, Elias's thoughts were interrupted by a subtle touch on his arm. He turned sharply to find Sofia Marini, the bartender and occasional informant, pressing a folded note into his palm. Her eyes darted nervously around the crowded ballroom, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to read this. It's about the next mask." Elias unfolded the note, the ink smudged but legible, a cryptic warning of a betrayal yet to come. The weight of the message settled over him, mingling with the cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses. In this city of shifting masks and veiled truths, trust was a luxury he could ill afford. He slipped the note into his coat pocket and scanned the room, searching for familiar faces beneath the ornate masks. Each glance felt like a gamble. The killer was out there, blending seamlessly into the crowd, and Elias was running out of allies. The night deepened, shadows lengthening across the cobblestones. Elias felt the cold seep into his bones, not just from the Venetian chill, but from the growing isolation that wrapped around him like a second skin. The lines were blurring, not just between friend and foe, but within himself. The fractured reflections in the canal below mirrored the fracturing of his own identity. As the clock in the distant tower began its slow toll toward midnight, Elias steeled himself. The game was far from over, and the killer's next move was imminent. But as the masks fell and the faces shifted, the only certainty was that no one and nothing was as it seemed. Elias's breath hitched as the final chime echoed, melding with the distant murmur of the city. Somewhere in the darkness, the 13th mask awaited. And somewhere in the shadows, Elias's own truth was slipping further away. He took a deep breath, pulling his cloak tighter around him, and stepped back into the swirling tide of faces. The hunt was relentless, the stakes impossibly high, and the line between salvation and ruin had all but vanished. And so, amid the opulence and the deceit, Elias Varga plunged once more into the labyrinth of masks and lies, where every step could be his last and every face a deadly illusion. Elias Varga stood alone on a narrow stone bridge, the cold night air biting through his tailored coat. Around him, masked revelers drifted like ghosts, their laughter and muted conversations weaving a tapestry of sound that both comforted and unnerved him. The grand masquerade was at its height, yet for Elias, the festival's allure had turned sinister. Each face in the crowd was a potential killer, each mask a veil of deceit. He unfolded the worn piece of parchment in his gloved hands, his eyes scanning the cryptic symbols and hastily scrawled notes. The pattern was elusive and intricate cipher that seemed to bind the killer's shifting, identities to the ancient legends whispered in Venetian alleyways. Elias's mind raced to connect the dots, a secret society, a historical vendetta, and the chilling realization that the killer's masks were not random, they were messages, a dark language woven into the fabric of the city's masquerade. But the breakthrough came at a cost. His breath hitched, and a cold sweat prickled at his temples. The lines between ally and adversary blurred with every new discovery. Doubt clawed at his confidence, fraying the edges of his carefully constructed emotional armor. He was beginning to question himself, his instincts, his memories, even his own identity. Later, in the dim sanctuary of a tavern tucked away from the glittering chaos, Sophia Marini met him with a cautious smile. The bartender's sharp eyes flickered beneath her simple black half-mask as she leaned in, her voice a low murmur amid the clinking glasses and murmured conversations. "Rumors swirl thicker than the fog tonight," she whispered, sliding a folded note across the scarred wooden bar. "Whispers of a shadow within the shadow, someone playing all sides, wearing masks no one dares name." Elias's fingers trembled slightly as he accepted the note, the stale scent of aged wood and Venetian spice filling his senses. Trust was a currency too precious to squander, yet here he was, weighing the word of a bartender against the mounting evidence and his own gnawing paranoia. The following evening brought a lavish gala, a swirl of silk and jewels beneath ornate chandeliers. Elias found himself across the crowded ballroom from Livia Conti, her striking dark hair cascading over an elegant gown, her vibrant eyes gleaming behind an intricate golden mask. They held each other's gaze, a silent conversation heavy with unspoken questions and tentative alliances. Livia's loyalty was a question mark, her motives as enigmatic as the city itself. "We're running out of time," Elias said quietly when their paths finally crossed, "and the killer's game grows more dangerous." Livia's smile was tight, practiced. "Venice has secrets that even the night fears to reveal. We must tread carefully." The tension between them was palpable, a fragile thread stretched thin by suspicion and necessity. Back in a cramped office cluttered with files and fading photographs, Marco Bellini slammed a dossier onto the desk. His rugged face was etched with frustration, the short beard rough against his clenched jaw. Cigarette smoke curled lazily from an ashtray, mingling with the stale air. "Elias, this obsession is going to get you killed," Marco snapped. "We're chasing shadows and you're losing grip on what's real." Elias met his gaze steadily, though the weight of doubt bore down on him. "If I don't catch him, more will die. I can't afford to falter." A heavy silence fell between them, the gulf between their perspectives widening. As the nights pressed on, the killer's elusive pattern remained just out of reach. Elias's emotional walls, once steadfast, began to crack beneath the relentless psychological assault. The masquerade's anonymity was a double-edged sword, a shield for the killer and a prison for Elias's trust. Every mask concealed a new lie, every face a potential betrayal. The clock was ticking, and with each passing midnight, the stakes grew higher. Elias knew that to unmask the killer, he would have to confront not only the shifting faces of Venice's grand masquerade, but the fragile, fractured pieces of his own identity. The question was whether he could hold on long enough to see the final mask fall. As the chapter closed, Elias stood once more on that moonlit bridge, the city's shadows swirling around him like a living entity. Somewhere in the crowd, the sixth mask moved, silently waiting, watching, and ready to strike again. Elias's breath caught in his throat as the distant church bells began to toll midnight, a grim reminder that time was running out. "Who are you beneath the mask?" he whispered to the night. The silence that answered was suffocating. The chase was far from over. The masquerade's fluid identities were no longer just a backdrop to the killer's deadly game. They had invaded his own circle, turning allies into enemies in the blink of an eye. The evening air was thick with the scent of damp stone and the faint trace of jasmine as Elias sat alone in the shadowed corner of a quiet canal-side cafe. The low murmur of gondoliers drifting by mingled with the distant, haunting melody of a violin somewhere deep in the city's labyrinth. His fingers tapped restlessly on the wooden table, eyes scanning the faded map of Venice's hidden alleys and secret passages. Yet the map offered no comfort now. It was a labyrinth not just of the city, but of trust and deception. Livia Conti had seemed an invaluable ally, her keen intellect and insider knowledge of Venetian high society a beacon in the murky depths of the investigation. But the mask she wore was not merely ornamental. It concealed a duplicity that Elias had only just uncovered. The subtle slipper-coded message misdirected, a whispered conversation overheard had unmasked her betrayal. And it cut deeper than any blade. The confrontation had been inevitable. Elias found her later that night in a grand hall where the masquerade's opulence was on full display. Crystal chandeliers scattered fractured light across the marble floor. Guests danced obliviously, their laughter a cruel contrast to the tension simmering between the two. "Why, Livia?" Elias demanded, his voice low but edged with the raw hurt of personal breach. "You were supposed to help me." For a heartbeat, her mask faltered. The vibrant eyes that once sparked with camaraderie now flickered with guilt and something darker fear, perhaps. "You don't understand," she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. "There are forces here you can't control. My family's legacy, the power structures woven into this masquerade. I had no choice," but her words rang hollow. Elias saw through the carefully crafted excuse, a thread in the web of lies that now entangled them all. Meanwhile, Marco Bellini's presence was a reluctant comfort. On the rain-slick streets beneath the flickering lamplight, his gruff pragmatism was a stark counterpoint to the swirling chaos. "You're losing ground," Marco warned, voice low but firm. "We can't afford more fractures in the team, but you've got to be smarter about who you trust." Elias nodded, the weight of isolation settling around him like a shroud. He knew Marco was right. The killer's game was not just about physical masks, but the facades people wore, the lies they told themselves and others. The betrayal was a brutal reminder that in this city of shifting faces, trust was the rarest currency. Back at the bustling tavern where whispered secrets flowed as freely as the wine, Sofia Morini watched Elias with keen eyes. Her role as an information broker was precarious, perched between the shadows and the light. Her voice, usually soft and measured, now carried an urgency that Elias could not ignore. "There's more at play than you realize," she warned, leaning closer so only he could hear. "The masquerade's not just a festival. It's a chessboard, and the pawns don't know they're being moved." Her words deepened Elias's resolve even as they underscored the dangers ahead. Every step forward was a gamble, every alliance a potential trap. That night, as Elias lay awake beneath the weight of the Venetian night, the relentless ticking of the clock echoed in his mind. 13 nights, 13 masks. And now the betrayal's price was painfully clear. In this deadly masquerade, trust could kill. The chapter closed with Elias staring out over the dark waters, the city's lights shimmering like fragmented truths. Somewhere beneath those reflections, the killer waited faceless, flawless, and merciless. Elias knew one thing with grim certainty: to survive, he would have to become a master of deception himself, or be consumed by the very masks he sought to unmask. And as the clock neared midnight again, the game was far from over. Years of walking Venetian streets, chasing shadows and ghosts, had forged in him a rugged pragmatism and a thick skin, but also a stubbornness that had often put him at odds with others, especially Elias Varga. Yet tonight, in the dim, cramped back room of a tavern tucked away from the festival's glittering chaos, something shifted. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and stale wine, mingling with the low murmur of voices that slipped through the cracked door. Elias stood close to the table, his sharp eyes scanning the haphazard arrangement of photographs, notes, and scribbled diagrams. Each piece was a fragment of the killer's maddening puzzle: masks, victims, cryptic symbols, and whispered rumors. But it was Marco who bent over the table, fingers tracing a nearly imperceptible pattern that had eluded Elias's meticulous scrutiny. "Look here," Marco said quietly, his voice rough but steady. "These 3 victims each found near waterways, but not just any canals. They're all close to the old bridges, the ones less traveled during the festival. The killer's using the city's geography as a strategy." Elias frowned, then leaned in. "You think the killer is staging the murders with the bridges in mind? As markers?" Marco nodded, a flash of vindication lighting his weathered features. "Exactly, it's a breadcrumb trail. We've missed it because we were too focused on the masks and the victims' identities. But the locations, those bridges, they're the key. In that cramped space, amid flickering candlelight that cast dancing shadows on peeling plaster walls, a fragile truce took shape." Elias looked up, eyes meeting Marco's with a newfound respect. Good work. This changes everything." The breakthrough was more than a clue. It was a turning point. Marco's insight cut through the fog of confusion, giving Elias a thread to follow. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope ignited. Later, in the hushed stillness of a palazzo's private chamber, Elias and Marco confronted the ghosts that had long shadowed their uneasy partnership. The room was cold, the air heavy with unspoken regrets and memories of past failures. Elias broke the silence, voice low but earnest. "I know I haven't made this easy. Your trust means more than you realize." Marco's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Neither of us is perfect. We've both got scars. But if we're going to stop this, we need to be on the same side. No more second-guessing." Their hands brushed briefly, a gesture small but charged with significance. Trust, once elusive, began to take root. As twilight draped Venice in a soft golden glow, the two men walked through a bustling square alive with festival revelry. Livia Conti appeared like a shadow stepping from the crowd, her dark eyes gleaming with urgency. "I have information that might help," she said, voice steady but edged with tension. "But you need to act fast. The secret society pulling strings behind the masquerade is more dangerous than we thought." Her revelation added layers to the investigation, deepening the political intrigue and raising the stakes. Elias and Marco exchanged a glance, the weight of the city's secrets pressing down upon them. Nightfall found them standing at the edge of a canal, the water's surface a mirror to the shimmering lights of masked revelers. Fog curled low, muffling the distant music and laughter. The moment was quiet but charged, the calm before the storm. "We've got to keep moving," Elias said. "No room for mistakes now." Marco's gaze was steady, the resolve in his eyes matching Elias's own. Together, as the masquerade's shifting faces danced in the distance, the two men forged a fragile alliance, their combined strength and newfound trust the best weapon against the killer who wore a different face each night. But beneath the surface, the shadows of betrayal and deception still lurked, threatening to unravel everything. The city held its breath, and so did they. The game was far from over. The candle's flicker cast long shadows across the cluttered table where Elias and Marco pored over maps and photographs. Outside, the muffled sounds of the masquerade, the laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses seemed a world away. Here, in the dim light, the hunt for the 13th mask was gaining momentum. "Look at this," Marco said, pointing to a series of faded notes pinned beside a map of Venice. "The killer isn't just picking victims at random. Each murder happened close to a bridge that's significant historically places tied to secrets, betrayals, old vendettas." Elias leaned in, tracing the thin red lines Marco had drawn connecting the dots. "So this killer is playing a deeper game, one that uses the city's history as a weapon." "Exactly," Marco replied. "And that means the next move won't be random, either. It's planned, calculated." Elias felt a chill. The killer's mind was more intricate than he'd imagined. That night, the tension between the two men eased, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. Marco's redemption wasn't just about the case, it was about reclaiming his own honor, proving to himself and to Elias that he was more than his past mistakes. As the hours slipped by, their partnership solidified a beacon of trust in a city where everyone wore a mask, and nothing was as it seemed. The clock was ticking. And now, with Marco's breakthrough, Elias felt a spark of hope flicker in the darkness. But in Venice, shadows never stayed buried for long. The masquerade continued, each mask hiding a secret, each secret a step closer to the truth or to oblivion. And somewhere the 13th mask smiled behind another face. The chapter closes on Elias and Marco standing together beneath the ghostly glow of a street lamp, their breaths mingling in the cold night air. The distant sounds of the festival pulse faintly through the fog, a reminder of the fragile world they strive to protect. Their eyes meet an unspoken promise hanging between them. The hunt is far from over, but for the first time in many nights, they are not alone.